Hi, boys and girls. Today we're going to read Chapter 5 called To the Pacific. Crossing the Bitterroots was difficult and dangerous. It began snowing. The ground was so slippery that several horses fell. Food was so scarce that Clark named a river Hungry Creek. Sacagawea was still nursing her baby and needed food badly. So did the men. Some were so ill they could barely walk. The hungry travelers had to kill and eat a few of their horses. The mountain crossing lasted until late September. On the prairie below, the explorers met many Nez Perce Indians. They traded with them for food. They stuffed themselves, so this is them kind of sitting, this would be like Lewis and Clark sitting with the Nez Perce Indians. They stuffed themselves with berries, dried salmon, and bread made from cama roots. Captain Clark was one of those who ate too much. "I am very sick today, and puke which relieves me," he wrote. Now that they had crossed the mountains, the explorers did not need their horses until their return trip. The Nez Perce agreed to take care of the animals until then. Near what is now Orofino, Idaho, the travelers made 5 canoes. In early October, they resumed their journey. So here's where we're at now. Okay, I kind of changed the stars a little bit. This is where we're at right now. They're in Orofino, Idaho, and they're starting to make their canoes. They paddled on toward the Pacific Ocean. Once again, they ran out of food. They either ate too much or they really weren't packing enough food. They bought 24 dogs from Indians and ate them. So they've eaten horses and they've eaten dogs. I know that must make many of you very upset, especially Miss Adeline. In what is now eastern Washington, they reached the Columbia River. So that's the second blue star here. All along this great river, they met Indians. And an all-male group would have alarmed the tribes. But when the Indians saw Bird Woman and Pomp, they welcomed the travelers. "No woman ever accompanies a war party," Clark explained in his journal. So remember, just like many of your tribes, all of these other tribes that are in this section of our country were also facing hard times and people stealing their lands and wars and all of these things. So when they saw Sacagawea and her baby on Lewis and Clark's boats, the other Native American tribes realized, okay, this isn't a war. We don't have to be defensive. They weren't so focused on fighting. They were more curious and interested and willing to help out. So Sacagawea was a good person to bring on this trip. As they reared the Pacific, rain began to fall. It rained day after day. The Columbia River grew so wild that the voyagers felt seasick. Huge logs dashing against the shore nearly crushed their canoes. The rain filled their boat and rotted their clothing. Also, there were fleas. These are tiny little bugs, and they bite you and they leave all these little itchy, scratchy marks all over you. They're so much worse than mosquito bites. The fleas got inside what was left over of the voyagers' clothing. The men were so itchy that they took their rags off and rode naked. Then came the moment they had long awaited. They could smell the ocean. On November 7th, 1805, they saw the ocean. Sacagawea and her baby had come more than 2,200 miles for this sight. So these are different drawings that people have created of Lewis, Clark, Sacagawea, and Pomp seeing the ocean for the first time. And again, I just highlighted in blue for you the 2,200 miles that Sacagawea and her baby traveled with the Corpse of Discovery. For nearly a month, the explorers camped along the Columbia River's north shore. So that would be about here. They were looking for a good place to spend the winter, but the rain did not let up. The men had trouble finding wood dry enough to start a fire. Bird Woman could not keep herself and Pomp warm and dry. One evening in late November, a Chinook Indian chief, so here's a Chinook Indian chief, I know that's some of your guys' tribe, visited the camp. He wore a cape made of sea otter skins. The explorers had spent all their blue beads. Remember those blue beads I showed you in an earlier chapter and how they used them as like money? Lewis offered the chief 2 blankets for the cape. I would not trade my coat for 5 such blankets, he answered. Then the chief saw Sacagawea's beautiful belt of blue beads. He wanted it as much as Captain Lewis wanted the cape. Birdwoman was forced to hand over her belt. Lewis got his cape. The captains gave Sacagawea a blue cloth coat in exchange, but her treasure was gone. So this is like her, from her original tribe, the Shoshone, these blue beads. It was like her most prized possession that had traveled along with her when she had gotten kidnapped, when she married Charbonneau, and when it made the whole 2,200-mile journey. And now Lewis wants something, so he takes something from Sacagawea to be able to get what he wants. And I don't know, what do you guys think about that? She's been nothing but help to them this entire time, and without her, they probably wouldn't even have come this far. And now she's forced to give up her most prized possession. By late November, the explorers had to pick a site for their winter quarters. They took a vote. Everyone, including Birdwoman and Clark's slave, York, voted on where to build their fort. This was one of the rare times in this period of history that a woman or a slave was allowed to have an equal vote with white men. Sacagawea wanted to move to the other side of the Columbia River. A tasty route was available there. This is the route we're talking about. Janey in favor of a place where there is plenty of wapato. Clark wrote, most of the men also wanted to move across the river where they could hunt elk. The expedition crossed the Columbia. As they did, they passed from Washington to Oregon. So they were at the Pacific Ocean. They're traveling back, and now they're on the other side of this river. See how it kind of borders Washington and Oregon? And they're just on the other side. So instead of the north side, they're on the south side of the river. Near present-day Astoria, Oregon, the explorers began to build their winter home. They called it Fort Clatsop because the Clatsop Indians lived nearby. Most of December 1805 was spent building Fort Clatsop. So here's what it looked like on the outside. They did have like a chimney. Here's a little bit of the inside that Lewis and Clark lived. And then here's like the corpse of Discovery outside the fence. There was enough wood to build the fort. It had 6 rooms, each with a fireplace. Remember, it's winter and they're cold. The land was high enough to keep from flooding in the constant rain. Elk was plentiful. These animals provided meat as well as skins for new clothes. So we're going to stop there today, and tomorrow we're going to read chapter 6, which is called Winter of 1805 to 1806. But this fort is another place that they designed and built themselves, kind of as their shelter. So on your slides, there's links to Google Maps, videos, websites, and you can really kind of explore and walk around and see what this looked like a little bit more. Okay? Hope you enjoyed. Bye.